Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host today. We're going to be going to our reporters in Ferguson, Missouri, Jakari Jackson and Joe Biggs. They tell us that the grand jury has reached a decision. They're waiting for it to be announced right now. So we're going to go to them in the next segment. But in this segment, I want to get right back to your phone calls. We got some people that have been waiting on the line. Let's go to Anthony in Florida. Let's see how many people we can get through here in a short period of time. Go ahead, Anthony.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. You're on.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'd just like to elaborate that what's going on in Ferguson is definitely there's real racism which should always be confronted, and then there are those who fan the flames of racial tension because they have their own selfish interests at heart.
Yes, that's true, and that's the danger, isn't it? That real racists get a pass if we try to make phony claims of racism.
And also, too, I'd like to say that with these police officers, I just recently looked at a graph, and it really astonished me. Like, if you look at a police officer in the 1960s, his uniform was just a basic, like a billy glove, and not handcuffs, gun, and all that stuff. And then as it progressed further, it looked more and more, intimidating and such. And the fact that they have lowered the standards to the point where they let these people who obviously have mental problems, who are sociopaths, who will shoot first and then ask questions.
Well, they actually had a police officer who sued. It was a police department in the Northeast. I can't remember which state it was. Maybe the guys can look it up. He actually sued the department because they had a maximum IQ requirement. You could not have 100, anything over 100 IQ, I think. And he sued them. They did not want him on the force because they said he had too high IQ, and the court actually upheld their standards. That's the most amazing thing about it. Yeah, we've seen a militarization of the police. We know that's being driven out of the federal government. That is their agenda. They want to militarize the civilian police force, and they want to use the military as civilian police. They're trying to conflate and combine those two. Let's go to, thank you, Anthony. Let's go to Jacob in Ohio. Go ahead, Jacob.
Hello, Anthony, or David. The control of the government is crazy in our schools right now. I mean, you have the Army workers in there that try to get people to sign up with them, and they just sit there and wait and have contests to win a free iPad or this, and have the kids come up just to register, and then your name's in the system, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not believe there was an article last week about a school district in Pennsylvania essentially giving the school officials the right to strip search children in their school. And they said, the school superintendent, when questioned about it, she said, well, no, they wouldn't do that for drugs. I really can't imagine a scenario in which they would do it. But we need to give that power to our police in the schools. And I'm like, where does it stop? Where do we have any kind of constraint on the police? We just give them carte blanche to do anything that they want to our children. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people have pulled their children out of the government schools and are homeschooling them. Thank you, Jacob. Let's go to Jerry in West Virginia. Jerry, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking the call. David, I am mostly concerned, not to deviate from the subject, but we had a big water spell here in West Virginia, and frankly, we've had very little feedback from the government, and frankly, you cannot reach anyone that seems to have some sort of idea of what seemed to happen.
You're going to have to organize outside of them and put pressure on them in the press. Thanks for calling. We're going to be right back with Jakari Jackson and Joe Biggs from Ferguson, Missouri. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. This is David Knight in Austin, and we are being joined right now by our reporters in Ferguson, Missouri, Jakari Jackson and Joe Biggs, who've been there for the last week awaiting the grand jury decision. We've now heard that there has been a decision made by the grand jury, but of course, as we pointed out earlier, the grand jury is a different situation than a courtroom. There's usually not a judge. There's not an argument from the defense attorney. Instead, it's just a prosecutor and a large jury. That's what the grand means. It means that there's more than 12 people, maybe 24 or more. So they have finished their deliberations, but of course, with it being a closed, secretive session, they will be able to release this, I guess, whenever and however they wish. Let's go to Jakari Jackson in Ferguson, Missouri right now.
How you doing, David? Jakari Jackson reporting from Clayton, Missouri. I got a little reverb in my ear. I don't know if you guys are hearing that as well.
No, don't hear that. But still, you haven't heard any details as to what the decision has been, only that they have reached a decision. Is that correct?
Yes, it was reported by CNN, I think, just a few minutes ago that they had reached the decision. But like you said, they're still stringing us along to find out exactly what that is. So hopefully it'll be sometime in the near future. Hopefully it'll happen while we're live on the show. But meanwhile, you can see the surroundings around us. We've done some reports over the past couple of days showing you guys outside the Justice Center. You can see all the media trucks, heavy police presence out here today. This is the largest police presence we've seen in this location since we started our broadcast. And also they have all the barricades and all the things going on over here to the other side of the screen. I want to talk a little bit about, before we get to the Darren Wilson verdict, some of the things that have been going on in and around the St. Louis area. Last night, we went out to another march, another peaceful march. I think the only injury to report was a journalist got hit in the head with a rock, I believe it was. But we marched peacefully with a group of about 1,000 people for about an hour in Shaw, Missouri, which is a little bit south of here. And it's good. You know, they do the shut down the streets, the shut it down for Michael Brown, as they call it. They go into an intersection and they shut it down for 4 minutes, symbolizing the 4 minutes that Michael Brown, or excuse me, the 4 hours that Michael Brown was left just dead on the road to bleed out without any chance of being revived. So they've been doing that. And the police last night were very well behaved. I think they've learned their lesson. They've had plenty of mistakes to learn from. They're staying 2 or 3 blocks in front of the protesters. They would block off traffic for about 4 minutes or whatever it was so they could shut down the protest, and then they would continue on with the march. So it's very peaceful, minus the guy who got hit with a rock. Everybody out there was in good spirits, and they keep hyping this up as it's going to be some huge violent thing. Is there a chance for violence? Yes, there is, but the majority of the people I've met out here don't want anything like that. They think if there is going to be violence, it's going to be outside agitators and other people who come in who just take advantage of the situation. But the people in Ferguson, the people here in Clayton, nobody really wants that to happen. Everybody's just preparing for the worst. You know, it's hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Well, you know, Jakari, there was also this report that we have up on Infowars.com. Besides the march that you just mentioned about a reporter getting hit in the head, there was also a report that a journalist was arrested. The police say that he was standing in the street, yet they have witnesses, multiple witnesses came forward, disputed that claim. They had photos and videos showing that he was taking photos from the sidewalk. Is this a similar tactic, or is it maybe the same incident that you guys were talking about a couple of nights ago where the police were warning people?
Yeah, it's the same one. We were there that night. It was... And the night that happened, the police were much better behaved. I can't say they acted perfectly, but they had a different guy in charge. He had the guys pretty calm, pretty collected. And then they were standing in front of the police station, but they went inside the firehouse, around and down the block to address some people who were standing in the street just a block down the road. So they get there, they tell all the journalists, all the protesters that they cannot stand on that side of the street. I was across the street. I didn't get the best view. One of our viewers told me that you can kind of see in the corner of one of my videos, but I think Joe captured it pretty well, at least when they cuffed the guy and were walking him into the firehouse. So you guys can go watch those videos for yourself. But it's my understanding that, yes, the journalist was not impeding the flow of traffic or anything else. And Joe was telling me that one of the officers was just doing what he was told to do. Well, we've been hearing that through social media. We can't confirm that one way or the other, but people are claiming on social media that one of the officers had volunteered the statement to somebody off camera, I guess, that he was just doing what he was told to do to target this particular journalist. That's why they haven't targeted us, and we hope that trend continues, but I don't think they want the media fear that goes along with arresting a lawful reporter who's just standing on the sidewalk, legally photographing. So
let me ask you, Jakari,
things have gotten better with the police. Well, go ahead, David.
Well, let me ask you, if the people there, you said a lot of them seem to be knowledgeable that it's an issue that is bigger than race. Has anybody been talking about the situation in Ohio, where, of course, there was that guy in Walmart? Someone called 911 and said he was waving a gun wildly around in Walmart. He was actually carrying a BB gun that he was going to purchase from Walmart. He was carrying that with him. The police showed up and just shot him down. And then the police, no action was taken against the police that shot him. We see that there really hasn't been a whole lot of protest going on there. There's been some protests from student groups, from an open carry group, but now the mantle of protest there seems to be strictly anonymous protesters showing up. There's a great picture. Murder is wrong, even when the murderer wears blue. So they're calling on that police officer to be fired or at the very least disarmed. No action was taken against that police officer there in Ohio. Is there any understanding or any connection in the minds of the people there at Ferguson to some of these other cases? Because clearly that was a case of, to me, that was much more clear-cut in terms of overreach and excessive violence of the police.
Yes, people are aware of things going on in other parts of the country. Of course, the latest thing that happened in New York, and also the young man who had the BB gun. So, you know, they'll come out and they'll chant the names of these other people, not just Michael Brown, but also other people here in the St. Louis area and around the country as well. So they're very aware and cognizant of the things that are going on. But why we don't have larger protests, larger demonstrations for those things, I don't really know. I'm not exactly sure how it happened that this is the issue that people decided to focus on. Mm-hmm. You know, there have been media about these other events as well, but this was the kind of the catalyst that got everybody together to focus on the situation. Like you said, you know, there's a lot of things that they're keeping from us as far as the particulars of this trial, but the things you mentioned, the Walmart shooting, the guy who got shot in New York in the stairwell, there are other more definitely clear-cut examples, but why it came to this, I'm not exactly sure.
Well, of course, it seems like to me that there's a lot of people in the conservative community, people who would have kind of a knee-jerk reaction to defend law enforcement first and foremost, and not really look very closely at particular incidents. It seems like they also are the same kind of people who are going to not be persuaded by demonstrations. They're actually, I think it's going to kind of backfire against those people when they see a massive group of people carrying signs and shutting down intersections, that sort of thing. It's going to make them, it's going to push them further into the camp of saying, yeah, we need to have even more law enforcement, don't we, to kind of shut this stuff down. Maybe there's other ways that we need to reach those people.
Well, the thing about it is, David, you know, whether it's police actions or military actions, they think if you're wearing a uniform, a lot of people, anything you do is, you know, on the up and up. But that's not the case. You know, we've seen some horrific things done in war theaters. We see horrific things done on our streets here in America, you know, growing the opium overseas, all kinds of things going on. So I'm not one of those people who think, you know, just because you're a uniform, everything you do is in the right. Yeah. So, but there are people who think that way. You know, they think that whether it's the guy that got shot in the stairwell in New York or some of these other instances, well, the officer pulled out a gun. They think these officers are these highly trained, you know, James Bond type of guys. They're the master of every situation. They can show up. They have perfect aim. They can do all these things. But that's not the case. These guys don't have very good training. And the training they do get, you know, it's this federalized training. You know, these very harsh, brutal tactics, you know, and since we've been out here the second time from our original trip in August, they have gotten a lot better, but there's still a lot of work to be done.
Well, and of course, it's the same sort of thing we saw in the story we covered last week coming out of the Albuquerque Police Department, the police department that has the highest percentage of shootings per capita, far greater than large cities like New York. And again, after they've been under the special scrutiny of the Department of Justice because so many people have complained about them, they still come out with a killology class and essentially training them that they're in a war zone, essentially telling them you are in a war and you are a warrior. There are people who wake up every morning determined to send your family to a box. That's the kind of mindset that causes this to happen. And of course, we saw earlier in that same area in Albuquerque, that's where they shot the homeless man that was up in the hills earlier this year. We also saw that they had instituted what one person at the New Mexico Police, an instructor at the New Mexico Police Academy, said was a shoot first curriculum. He refused, this veteran instructor at the police academy refused to teach that curriculum, calling it a shoot first curriculum. And they fired him because of it. They were not going to change the curriculum. So we see this being pushed, and yet there's so many people, I think, that are still just mindlessly supporting anything that law enforcement does, not concerned about establishing some outside oversight or some rules of engagement. I think those people need to be reached. There's a number of ways that we can reach people. I've heard callers call in. They're concerned. They don't feel like we're making headway, but I do believe that we are making headway in the information war. I think demonstrations are a part of it. They will appeal and change the minds of some people. Other people, we're going to need a more rational approach. They're going to need to see these incidents as people videotape them on their phones and put them up on the internet. I think that will help a lot of people. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're going to go to one of our reporters in Ferguson, Missouri right now, Joe Biggs. Joe?
How you doing, David? We're outside the Justice Center in Clayton, Missouri, and like you can understand right now, tensions are pretty high. There's a much larger police presence today. There's a lot of different security teams driving around. Just tensions are high for the verdict, what's going to happen today. Everyone's just waiting to find out how to react and how to respond. I mean, you've got to understand, this is since August, and this has just been building up so much over time. People have gone from kind of getting tired of it to feeling like they're being teased, that the verdict was going to come out last week. Now here we are a week later waiting on this again. So everyone's just really emotional, and they just want to find out because, like I said before, that Ferguson fatigue has definitely sat in, and people are just fed up, and they just want to find out what's going on.
You know, we're getting the Washington Post, CNN, others saying that press conferences are being prepared, that the grand jury has reached a verdict. They're also saying in this Washington Post article that although a parallel federal civil rights investigation of the shooting is continuing, federal investigators have all but concluded that they don't have a case against Darren Wilson. So it looks like this is going to be, he's going to be found innocent. They're not going to move forward with prosecution. And I think, of course, really this as we mentioned earlier in the program, a grand jury can be used, and I believe it's being used here, to provide political cover for the prosecutor. He could move ahead, even if the grand jury said they didn't want to indict into a trial. The prosecutor still has that opportunity to do that. So he's trying to get some political cover from these people. What do you think, in terms of the people that you've talked to, the pulse that you've gotten from people as you've been there this last week? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think it's going to get violent?
Yes.
You do?
I do. You know, there's more people out here who want peace, but at the end of the day, David, it only takes a few bad apples to really just turn everything into complete and total chaos. You know, last night I got a picture from an area in Shaw where people said they want to burn it down. So, like I've said, tensions are very high. You know, you've got 90% of the people out there who are just super peaceful, loving people who just want to go out there and have their voices be heard. But you're going to have some out there who really want nothing more than to start some chaos, release anger in any way they can, because they feel like that's the only way that they can be heard. So it's one of those things that we just have to wait and sit back and find out what's going to happen and plan accordingly.
Well, and of course, last time you were there, you got shot with a rubber bullet. You guys got gassed. We saw video that you guys took where they were using laser sights to target people that were, what, about 100 yards away or so? I mean, they were no immediate threat to the people, yet they clearly had their guns and sights pointed on them. So, I mean, there's two sides to this as well. Do you see any, how do you feel? You believe that, of course, that all it takes is, like you said, is just a few agitators. They could be false flag agitators or whatever. What is your take in terms of the police? You guys have said that they seem to be more professional this time.
Yes, the lieutenant that was there at the Ferguson Police Department that came in the other night, he was very professional, had very great leadership skills, and really led the officers there that night in a responsible manner. They did everything right. Yeah, there were arrests made. There were some people who purposely, I don't think they minded being arrested. They stood there right there in the middle of the road. But a lot of people are saying, hey, you know, we're worried about the MRAPs again. You know, we don't want to have our children in the neighborhood have these laser dots on their chest because some guy is pointing a sniper rifle at them. You know, the way things were handled in August, it makes a lot of people worried now. Is that going to happen again? So everyone is kind of on pins and needles because when this verdict comes out, you can tell the government's, they're preparing for the worst. They're expecting massive riots. They're expecting hell to break loose. So everyone's sitting here waiting, including myself. Are they going to come out here again, arrest journalists, shoot at journalists? Are they going to come out here in full battle rattle in these MRAPs and tanks and all this stuff? I just hope it doesn't get to that point again. But, you know, they're sending 100 FBI agents. They've already done that. They've got 1,000 police officers in the area. That's almost more than we have in Iraq. So
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing when you look at the number of people they have here for something. So it's very interesting to watch that.
Now I can tell from looking at you that it is freezing cold there. What's the temperature there?
Oh, it's below freezing, and the wind is blowing extremely hard.
Wow. And you're standing in front of what? Is that the court building or is that the police station there?
The Justice Center.
The globalist social engineers are not just targeting us with propaganda. They are manipulating our genetics. We are being targeted at every level by estrogen mimickers that lower our testosterone and other hormones and natural compounds that the body needs. After consulting top doctors, nutritionists, pharmacists, and others, we have developed what I believe is the ultimate non-GMO organic super male vitality formula sourced from powerful organic herbs and then concentrated for maximum potency. Super Male Vitality was developed to activate your body's own natural processes instead of using synthetic chemicals. Super Male Vitality by Infowars Life is so powerful that I only take half the recommended dose. For a limited time, we are offering 15% off Super Male Vitality at InfoWarsLife.com to introduce you to this powerful supplement. Visit InfoWarsLife.com today to secure your Super Male Vitality. InfoWarsLife.com.
I think. And he sued them. They did not want him on the force because they said he had too high IQ, and the court actually upheld their standards. That's the most amazing thing about it. Yeah, we've seen a militarization of the police. We know that's being driven out of the federal government. That is their agenda. They want to militarize the civilian police force, and they want to use the military as civilian police. They're trying to conflate and combine those two. Let's go to, thank you, Anthony. Let's go to Jacob in Ohio. Go ahead, Jacob.
Intimidating and such, and the fact that they have lowered the standards to the point where they let these people who obviously have mental problems, who are sociopaths, who will shoot first and then ask questions.
Well, they actually had a police officer who sued. It was a police department in the Northeast. I can't remember which state it was. Maybe the guys can look it up. He actually sued the department because they had a maximum IQ requirement. You could not have 100, anything over 100 IQ. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host today. We're going to be going to our reporters in Ferguson, Missouri, Jakari Jackson and Joe Biggs. They tell us that the grand jury has reached a decision. They're waiting for it to be announced right now. So we're going to go to them in the next segment. But in this segment, I want to get right back to your phone calls. We got some people that have been waiting on the line. Let's go to Anthony. Ask if we try to make phony claims of racism.
And also, too, I'd like to say that with these police officers, I just recently looked at a graph, and it really astonished me. Like, if you look at a police officer in the 1960s, his uniform was just a basic, like a billy glove, and not handcuffs, gun, and all that stuff. And then as it progressed further, it looked more and more.
Anthony in Florida. Let's see how many people we can get through here in a short period of time. Go ahead, Anthony.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. You're on.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree with you. I'd just like to elaborate that what's going on in Ferguson is definitely there's real racism, which should always be confronted, and then there are those who fan the flames of racial tension because they have their own selfish interests at heart.
Yes, that's true. And that's the danger, isn't it? That real racists get a pass.